All right, welcome back to Yuneisy now with your host Chuck Stevenson, coming at you with some UFC fight announcements. So UFC Fight Night Wmma versus Borralho goes down on September 6th in Paris, France, and they've added not one, but two ladies bouts to the card. Most likely these are going to be on the prelims, but it's nice to get a couple of ladies bouts on, a rare European UFC card. I mean, UFC doesn't go to Europe too often, but they're going back to France in September. So let's start with this one. This is at Flyweight. Yuneisy Duben taking on the debuting Kennedy Freeman. Duben, of course, became known off of the Contender Series when she got a first-round knockout win, and then she got, a first-round knockout loss in her debut recently. So, went from a career high to a career low. Freeman, on the other hand, is making her UFC debut. She is the daughter of a UFC veteran, Ian the Machine Freeman, and Kennedy Freeman's nickname is the Machine 2.0. This is only the second time in history that a fighter has made their UFC debut and their parent was a UFC fighter. I forget the first time it happened, but this is only the second time, and it's the first lady doing so. So let's go ahead and look at the stats on this one. So Duben comes in at 6-1. The Machine 2.0 coming in at undefeated at 6-0. So both ladies have similar records. Of course, Duben coming off a loss to Carly Giudice back in March via knockout from a head kick. Kennedy Freeman, her three most recent bouts, all come with a finish. So out of Cage Warriors. Tapology doesn't have an age listed for Freeman for some reason. Duben is 29. Freeman will be the taller fighter at 5'6", 167 centimeters to 5'4", 163 centimeters for Duben. No reach listed for Freeman. Duben is listed at 65.5 inches, 166 centimeters. I'm a little disappointed with this bout. First off, Duben, to me, exemplifies the biggest faults with the Contender Series. They get one impressive win, and they get a contract based off of that without even looking to see how good a fighter is. To me, Duben is not impressive at all. She doesn't have... The only time she fought someone with any fights available to list on their records was Shannon Clark at the Contender Series. And while, that was a very nice win, very impressive, why was someone who had 0 wins over opponents with actual fight records fighting in the Contender Series? I just don't understand that. The only thing I like out of Duben is that it lists her as fighting out of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, which is where I'm from. That's it. For Freeman, I'm a little disappointed that she is fighting at Flyweight. She has fought her last 3 fights at Bantamweight. Now, she fought 3 times in 2018 at Flyweight. Doesn't fight again until November of 2023. Returns as a Bantamweight for Cage Warriors. Fights 2 times in 2024. Also at Bantamweight. Why did the UFC sign her to fight a Flyweight fight? They don't need more Flyweights right now. They have plenty. What we need is up-and-coming Bantamweight talent. Now, that's not a disappointment in Freeman. That's more a disappointment in the UFC's going, let's sign her up for a Flyweight bout. No, you need Bantamweights, not Flyweights. that's just silly. Like, bantamweight or flyweight has enough fighters right now, and they're right now they're in the middle of trying to get a lot of the older fighters out of there to replace them with the newer fighters. But bantamweight needs fighters, period. And they need anyone with, excuse me, they need anyone with talent right now. So I'm a little disappointed that she's fighting at flyweight and not bantamweight. Other than that, I really don't have a whole lot to say about this fight. I'll have to do some more tape study on Freeman, but early on, I'll take her to beat Yuneisy Duben. For the next fight, we move down to strawweight. Shauna Bannon coming in, taking on Sam Hughes. Neither fighter is ranked. Sam Hughes, longtime UFC veteran now. Bannon fought a few times. Again, Bannon's another fighter. It's like, why is she in the UFC, in my opinion? Hughes at least gets enough wins against decent competition to justify staying, even though she's also suffered some tough losses. Let's go ahead and look at the stats on this one. Wmma B coming in at 7-1. Sam Page coming in at 10-6. Now, Bannon's another one. She lost her UFC debut, dropped a decision to Bruno Brazil almost 2 years ago, picks up a split decision over Alice Ardelane, and then picks up a submission over Puja Tomar. Both of her wins in the UFC came up against people who had just signed with the UFC. So she has yet to face any actual good UFC-worthy competition or beat them. Hughes, out of her last 3 losses, she dropped a decision to Yasmin Haregi a year and 4 months ago. Picked up a split decision win over the previously unbeaten Victoria Dudakova 10 months ago. And most recently, 3.5 months ago, defeated Stephanie Luciano via split decision. Hughes is the elder fighter, 33-31 for Bannon. They are the same height, 5 inches, 165 centimeters. And the reach is almost identical at roughly 65 inches, 165 centimeters for Bannon, 64.5 inches, 164 centimeters for Hughes. All right, I'm going to say this one. Again, much like Duben, I do not think Bannon is a UFC caliber fighter. I think she was pulled in too early. She was being hyped up in Invicta. I didn't understand the hype at the time, and I still don't understand it now. I mean, if your only 2 wins in the UFC are coming up against people making their UFC debut, that's not that impressive. And she's boring. Like, she's boring to watch. She's making these kicks at distance with no power behind them, doesn't throw a jab, doesn't really throw much of anything in the way of punches. Mostly he's just throwing kicks from outside range with no power to him. Not impressed. Sam Hughes, what's her best quality? I would say she's absolutely tough. She is just a tough fighter. She's a tough out for a lot of people. I'll give her credit, man. She had a tough first few fights in the UFC. Dropped a TKO loss to Tisha Torres, or now Tisha Pennington, in her UFC debut. Then she fought Loma Lookboonmee, one of the best, probably the best pure striker in the UFC right now. In her second bout, dropped a contentious decision to Leona Pinheiro. Picked up some wins. Dropped a weird decision to Piera Rodriguez. Has a win over Jacqueline Amorim, who was undefeated at the time. She's had a mixed record. But she is actually beating some UFC-worthy fighters. And some fighters with veterans. Like, she has, in the UFC alone, she has 2 wins over previously undefeated fighters. So I'll give Sam Hughes credit. Now, I will say this, though. If Sam loses to Shauna Bannon, she might want to consider hanging it up. I know that's incredibly mean of me to say, but that That's how low my opinion of Shauna Bannon is. It is that low. Like, if you're losing to her at this point in your career, Sam, you might want to consider hanging them up. If you're losing to Shauna Bannon, you're probably not a you're not a UFC caliber fighter yourself. That's all I really have to say about it. All right, so that is it for UFC Fight Night. Was it Wmma versus Baralio, aka UFC Paris? Goes down September 6th in Paris, France. A flyweight bout. One of whom the fighters in it should be fighting at bantamweight, and then a strawweight bout with a fighter I really don't even care to watch. Yeah, the UFC is not in a great place right now. But they could easily turn it around. That's the thing. Like, is the UFC like in a weird rut right now? Yeah. But is it fixable? It's very easily fixable with some better matchmaking. So let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Hit that like button, and thanks for watching WMAC Now, the best, most complete women's mixed martial arts dedicated platform on YouTube. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.